Welcome to Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. With Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks, Bryan Cush from Sawdust Bureau, and Robin Lewis from RobinLewisMakes. Hi everyone, I hope you're all very well. This is episode 27, Season 2 of the Shop Stool Podcast. As always, I want to start by introducing my two co-hosts. Joey, how's it going?
Yeah, very good. Robin, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. And Bryan, how are you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad down here in the pariah state of Victoria.
Yeah. You've obviously had a bit of a busy week in that regard.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. And my name is Robin Lewis, so welcome to the show, everyone. Now, before we get into the show tonight, I have some news, and I haven't even told Joey or Bryan that I'm going to be announcing this news. So this is fresh, hot off the press. I am expecting a second child.
Holy
congratulations.
Beginning of January 4th, I think. January 3rd or 4th, yeah.
Nice one.
So, yeah, getting ready for number 2. I'm super excited, and I've already got the cot made, which is kind of cool.
I don't even know. Have you got the bedrooms and everything available? Are you like set your house-wise? Are you good, or are you going to have to do some work?
Yeah, I reckon we'll be all right, but that's just because of the approach that we've taken to parenting.
Yeah.
You know, we should be fine. But at some point, like we reckon we're going to stop at 2 kids. At some point, probably in like the next 5 to 10 years, we're either going to have to renovate or, move out.
Yeah. Find some space. Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. So it's
cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be we might have to call an end to the season at the end of the year, and then so I can go on some paternity leave.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty excited. Anyway, back to the show. So Joey has got a story.
Yes.
Joey's story. Anyone who follows the shows knows about Joey's stories.
I don't know, man.
Put your feet up, get a beer.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this as well. So what's going on?
So it's a really similar MO to everything else, all these other stories, and it started with lovely lady client and her dream kitchen. Great. Yeah. Let's build your dream kitchen. And everything was going pretty good. The clients are stuffing around a little bit, getting me what I needed, but about 2 or 3 weeks delay with getting me what I need, and then actually by the time they were ready to install, it was a few weeks longer than they had anticipated, but didn't bother me. I had everything just dropped off in their garage, so fine. So install day comes, and now I meet Mr. Client, the husband, and it just turns on its head. Like,
this is not the first time that you've had this issue with the one half.
That's what I mean. It's the same bloody thing where the dude is a complete prick.
Yeah. What was his problem?
I'm so emotionally drained from this all week. I've just been dealing. This constantly texting me about. At this point, I'm just about to walk away from this one and just.
So was this at the stage that you had quoted it and she had?
No, this is we're installed it. He's there.
Oh shit! Right, okay. You got right to the end.
Built.
Sorry, I missed that bit.
Yeah. We're installing. So halfway through the install, so this guy is either a manager of a construction firm group or the owner of this kind of construction. I'm not entirely sure, but he's got tools. He's renovating the house. He's he thinks he knows what he's talking about, but he's OCD like you've never met, and I don't know how to deal with someone like he is measuring everything we do with calipers. Like this guy.
What, while you're there?
While we're there, and
so boy,
he started. We had. I don't want to get too much in the weeds because it just goes on and on. But we had installed all the cabinetry, and we're starting to do face panels and get things just lining up nicely. And then he starts unscrewing the cabinets from the wall and pulling, because he's like, oh, this doesn't line up properly. We need to pull the unit. And I'm like, whoa. This is your kitchen, sure. At some point, if you want to keep fiddling with this stuff, you have to take responsibility for what happens all the knock-on effects of you pulling these cabinets around and shifting stuff.
Now, sorry, but up until this point, have you sort of got a vibe that it's going to go this way? Or is he just suddenly turned?
Pretty much from when I met him, I was like, oh, right. You could just tell the personality type. I'm the boss. You know, this is my way or the highway kind of thing. And I was just playing it cool. But at that point, when I said you're going to have to take responsibility when something happens, if something doesn't fit at some point, it's not my fault. You just started pulling the cabinets off the wall. That's when it's, Joey, come outside. And so he took me outside and just tried to give me a dressing down in front of all the other guys that were there on site. And he just kind of lost his mind at me for 10 minutes. And then this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I could have done a better job working out of the back of my van. This is, the worst kitchen I've ever seen. And then I'm like, okay, well, show me. What have I done that is so terrible? And so he starts complaining about this 1/4 millimeter little gap that I can fix, but he was just going off his nut about it. There was one legitimate chip in one of the oak panels that I hadn't seen, and I said, shit, man, sorry, I'll replace that panel. And then he goes, no, I don't even care about it. And I was like, all right.
It doesn't sound like it.
Why are we talking about this?
Did you get the feeling he's just trying to lowball you and get a discount off the final invoice?
That was my impression after that day. And I was like, this guy is just complaining about everything.
Yeah.
So part of this is that he had picked up some of the finished panels from my workshop to help me transport it to his house. In the process, at some point, he dropped the drawer fronts for part of this kitchen and dinged the corners up. Now,
and he's told you this?
No, he's not admitting to it because I didn't do it. So someone did it. It wasn't me. But now, because it's all grain matched over this whole big wall of panels, I've just had to remake a whole wall of panels because there's a little ding on these corners, and so that's just a nightmare. And then he's changed he's just a guy who talks, and you can't get anything done while they're there because it's just talking. Jeez. So the end result of all this is I still have to go back tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting because he's been texting me all day saying how some bits of the kitchen don't work and we need to rip it all out and start again, and he's going to show me how to do it.
You looking forward to your tutorial?
It's going to be an interesting day tomorrow, I tell you. Yeah. So it would have been interesting to do the podcast tomorrow night because I would have like a definitive answer to the story. So at this point, originally he actually said he just wanted me to drop the kitchen off and he would install it when he was ready. And I think that's probably what should have happened because he's got some ridiculous level of accuracy, which I don't actually know how to achieve what he's asking because I just can't do it. I'm not sure what he wants. So
he does sound like a case of just drop it there, just discount whatever your day's labor rate was and just get on with it because he sounds like a disaster.
So at this point, depending what his attitude is, right first thing tomorrow morning, I will probably end up saying, look, you wanted to do the install in the first place. I'm going to take $2,000 off the final price of this job and go for it. Go for your life. Here's all the things you need. I've got all the documents I need for the brochures and things for the different kinds of hardware. And so here, follow the instructions. There you go. It's your baby. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen. But let's see. And I'm going to be losing money. It's not worth... At the start of the week, I was like, that's it. I'm taking this guy to court. Like, he is not getting away with my cash. And at this point, we are so busy. I do not have the mental power to be dealing with just a guy who's just not wanting to pay and completely unreasonable. So... it's just one of those, like, what have I got myself into?
Deep breaths.
Yep.
Because we've talked about this before, about where the line is between taking money and taking your pride back. And it's much like, I guess now, obviously, because you have a lot of work on the go, it's an easy choice.
Yeah.
But Bryan, have you ever walked away from a job because you just thought, nah, this smells wrong, something's not right?
I've been close maybe once. I think I spoke about it before, the table that had to get up the 4 flights of stairs, and I had to cut the steel stringer in situ with an angle grinder, and that was probably the closest I've been. But I can definitely see that doing kitchens would be an absolute nightmare. The volume of work, the number of things that have to come together perfectly.
So many parts.
So thankfully I haven't, but 90% of my work is all freestanding, so once it leaves the workshop, I'm pretty confident that it's going to get into the apartment and look the same as when it left my shop. But no, I haven't quite had those experiences yet.
I've definitely walked away from jobs just right off the bat, like the product you want me to make sounds weird and dodgy. Like, why do you want?
I've had plenty of those. Yeah.
Like, why do you want me to make that? I don't want to do it. Or the whole your company sounds dodgy. Like, this is some official big company emailing me from a Gmail account. It's just doesn't sound right. Like,
if an email starts, Joey, dear sir, I'm done. Yeah. I'm done. Yeah. I know it's been sent to 100 different people.
Well, there's that, and it's got 3 different types of fonts and cut and pastes, and you're like, nope. Yeah. But see, that happens on a daily basis. But the ones where people actually make an effort to give me a phone call, and then they send me follow-up information and pictures and dimensions, and you're like, right, this is a legit client.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to know what the partner of that person is going to be like, and I've come to learn. That's the reason those people don't call me, is because they can't do it in a nice way, so the wife does it. And not to say that they're in cahoots, but it's like they understand that that's not how they work, so that's fine. The lady of the house is the one who's dealing with me, but he's the one who says that the work is shit.
Yeah, it just gets too much, and you just can't hand over that control any longer.
Yeah.
You just imagine his brain exploding at the thought that someone's getting away with this.
It's such a strange, the whole thing is, it kind of does my head in. Like, this guy's talking about inconsistencies of measurements that you would find the same inconsistency between 2 different brands of measuring tape. Like, we're talking like, actually he's complaining about 1/4 mil, 1/2 mil, and I'm just like, jeez, I'm not sure what you want. Your house is crooked as, a crooked thing. And so I thought I did a pretty darn good job, but nope.
I must say, I've only ever done, with this, working in this business, 1 install on site, and that really made me reconsider ever doing that again. So I'm working on a bathroom, and it was fine. There was no problems, but you've got to problem solve in the moment.
Yeah,
you've got to get it right, and
not even in the moment. It's you have to do it in advance. You have to think of all the things that could go wrong.
Right,
and you bring all the backup tools. Yeah,
that's
so
it.
I've just put a drill through your concrete wall. And now I've got to do something. Like, I can't just say, all right, I'm out, I'm done, see you later. I've got to solve it. And it's a lot of stress. And especially, Bryan, as you say, with the kitchen, where there's just parts. There's parts everywhere. You've got to make it come together. So at the moment, I'm working on a bathroom vanity for a client. So it's a very simple bathroom vanity. And the top has already been provided. It's a sink that's, I can't remember what the term is. It's like it sits on the
vessel.
Yeah, it sits on the countertop. So I don't even need to worry about plumbing on the inside of it. It's just such a simple thing. But we haven't discussed the install. And it's the one thing that I'm nervous about. Because, if this client says to me, will you install it? Like, it's money, but I really don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want that responsibility.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can definitely be a maker of things who says, yep, right to your door. I'll even carry it into the house for you, and then you got to get what I say sometimes, the relevant professionals to do the rest of the job.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. So, is there a
plumber,
very defined line where
it's pretty grey, and it depends often on the relationship between, say, the client and the plumber. Oftentimes, for renovations, I find that the client already has an existing relationship with their other subtrades. And so they'll be on a first name basis. They're friendly, and so they'll be like, "Oh, Jim the plumber, he'll just sort that out for me." And you're like, "Yep, fine, thank you very much."
Like it might even be cheaper for them if the plumber is in there doing things. All their tools are in the house. They're familiar with the house. Whereas for you to move all your stuff in and out of a van, just that setup time, sometimes it does make sense just for them to say, "No, we'll just take it off your hands."
So generally,
that's interesting.
The plumber's got to be in there with his toolkit anyway. He's got to probably drill a hole. He's got to silicon on whatever he's got to silicon on. It's very easy for him to run an extra bead of silicon along the back edge of the vanity, and it's finished. Sometimes they won't, because they're like, "Ooh, if I stuff this up, there's big consequences." But if it's like tile on tile, you can't really stuff up a bead of silicon. So
you'd be surprised.
Well,
we've all learned at some point.
But yeah, I mean, if it's a vanity and you've got wallpaper behind it, you probably don't want to be doing
Oh no, we can't go back to the wallpaper conversation. We've gone through that therapy, Joey.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a really, I guess, a good angle for me to take, because I haven't actually sussed the room out yet. I haven't seen the room that it's going into. But if I didn't want to go with it, just say it's in your best interest, because you're getting the room renovated all at once. I'll give it to you. Just get the builder to put it in, and the plumber.
I mean, you think about it. If you buy a vanity from the shop, you don't expect the people at the shop to come and install it. Usually, there'll be a combination of the builder and plumber who does that. In that case, so you can say, "Well, I'm not qualified to be blah blah blah. I just make boxes out of wood." So that's
and talking about boxes, Brian, have you worked with Tasmanian myrtle?
Actually, funny that you say that. I was in a timber yard the other day looking at the hydro wood. The stuff that comes from the bottom of the lake that they've recovered. I nearly bought some. It was a little bit pricey for what I was doing. So I didn't. It looks beautiful. There's some amazing grain pattern in it.
Wow.
And I reckon with finish on it would just pop. Like, it's really stunning.
What kind of colour is that?
It ranges all kind of reds, browns, caramels.
Oh, okay. I didn't realise it had such. I thought it was very strictly red.
No. It was the piece the batch that I was looking at were pretty brown. It was really nice stuff. But
what's the supply on that like? I mean, are they having to dig up logs out of the lake? Is it pretty limited, or is it heaps?
I think it's called Lake Pyman, in south. Oh God, I'm just going to make it up. Maybe south western Tasmania. But I mean, they've been at it for years, and you see, if you go on Hydrowood's Instagram, you'll see like pontoons with diggers just sort of clawing. So I mean, there must be plenty in there. I haven't personally used it. I just bought some of the Tassie oak, just to make a memory box for Xavier, my son. And I just wanted a bit of timber with a story, and I think that's their whole thing, because you are paying a premium for it, for the story behind it, and the fact that it is obviously fairly environmentally friendly. It's something that would otherwise sit at the bottom of the lake and eventually rot, and they're recovering it. I have heard some issues of moisture, but obviously the whole thing is that it's sealed, like, because it's in a deep cold water lake, it's sealed from the oxygen.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't rot quickly. Like, I think the timbers have been there for 100 years or whatever. But when it's cut and dried, I think there are some problems with it splitting. I've heard
and stuff.
Yeah, I have heard of other makers having issues with it. So
there's lots of wood that does that, though. I mean,
there is.
Iroko is going to split and twist on you no matter what you do.
True. So I just wanted to try a small bit to make a box, and see how flat it stays while I'm machining it. It's beautiful stuff, and I do love the story of it's been fished from the bottom of the lake in Tasmania. It's pretty unusual.
We have what they call swamp carry here.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the same thing, but obviously different. But it actually seems quite difficult to get a hold of. People say there are large amounts of it left, but it's just so damn expensive that it's almost like, why would you? It's not really that affordable.
Yeah, unless you really find a client who's prepared to pay the premium for the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think this, like the Tassie oak that I bought in a normal, from a normal mill and timber yard, it was maybe probably $18 a meter at that dimension. And then you go into hydro wood and it sort of jumps to $30.
Wow, as much as that.
Yeah.
Jeez. And the lake is freshwater.
It's freshwater, yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine a salt water would be more of a preservative, but I wonder what that would do to the timber.
I think what happens is, this is my understanding, is that over time and in the lake environment anyway, the fresh water pushes the sap out of the log through the end grain and it replaces it. So you end up kind of infusing, because it's the natural sap in the wood which is the problem with rot. So if you just replace it with water, which is the same as all around in the lake, then it kind of stabilizes. As I understand it, what I don't know exactly. I believe really early on in New Zealand's history, they would fell a log into a stream and let the water flow push the sap through the end grain and push the sap out the other end of the log over a few weeks.
To purposely try to remove the sap from it?
Yeah, and replace it with water.
Right.
And that way, when they mill it, the water evaporates and dries out much quicker than the natural sap does.
That's crazy.
So the actual drying time...
such a quick process as well. I would have thought the sap would get forced out over decades, you know. Yeah,
well, you think about a stream with constant pressure on the end grain of a freshly cut log. All the cell pores are open, and it's just going to kind of keep sucking up this water, and it's going to get pushed kind of downstream. And that is my understanding, is that the water evaporates much easier once they mill it, and you have a shorter drying time. Especially if in those days everything's air dried, and you want the shortest possible dry time. Yeah. But all those facts need fact checked.
Do we need a Science with Joey segment on the show?
You need a Joey needs fact checked.
It sounded believable. Well, yeah.
So Bryan, you're working on I saw a picture on Instagram of a coffee table.
Yeah, so that's...
If I'm honest, has the weirdest dimension. Is that thing massive or just very low?
It's very low.
Right, okay. It looked like a bed at first.
Yeah, I thought it was a bed.
It's very, very low. It's 300 high, 1,300 long, 800 wide. So yeah, it's quite low, and it's sort of nearly like a crab, like it's sort of something on the ground rather than... But it was something that I spoke about in the show a long time ago, and it's sort of gone back and forth from me to the client, and it's a collaboration with the client's son, who's an artist who does stuff with basalt. So it's going to... So it's going to map out the area that they live, which is near Hanging Rock in Victoria. And they've hiked around the different extinct volcanoes, gathered rocks from each of the volcanoes, labelled them, and then the table is going to be like an actual map of the area with these rocks sort of... I think we're going to cut them into circles and inlay the basalt into the timber.
So it's not going to be topographical?
It's not going to be topographical now. It's going to be 2D.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. Put some work into it.
I proposed the topographical one, but they wanted the practicality of still having a flat surface.
Yeah.
But no, I was pretty keen. I was pretty keen to sort of carve up one side of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be a fun little table, and it's playing with the idea. So it's a split top. I wanted to keep all the spacings the same from the top to the legs, and it's wide enough that when it goes into a house, the shrinkage on it could make that gap a little bit big. You know, it sort of goes from 1.5 mil to maybe 3.5 mil by the time the top shrinks. And I wanted it to stay at 1.5 mil, so I've gone a split top with a groove in the middle and a tongue that sort of sits in there. So Yeah, it's got a few little nice details in it, and it's a pretty manageable piece. I'm working on...
How big are the pieces of basalt going to be? Because you say
small.
you're going to do
I think the largest piece would be maybe 15 mil in diameter.
Okay.
Oh,
and then,
right, real
and then
real
we're going to...
small, okay.
Yeah, small, and then we're going to engrave some contouring around hanging rock and add some other features in tiny little brass dots. So yeah, it's going to read like a map, but you'd have to know that it was a map before you saw it. Like, we didn't want it just to be all contours, so it's obvious. It's going to be like
Can you sneak an X somewhere on the map?
an X for what?
Like X
where the
marks the spot.
treasure is.
Oh, where the treasure is. Yeah. I'll put it on the underside, and eventually they'll
underneath.
discover
Carve a little X in. That'd be cool.
it. Yeah.
That sounds like an awesome project.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's good clients, and it's always nice to work with a new. I've never worked with basalt, so nice to introduce something like that.
Is the stone going to remain natural, or are you going to have to like somehow cut it exactly like a disc or something?
We're going to cut it, using a diamond cutter.
Like a plug cutter or something. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
That is
And then
the plan.
Drop it into a slot.
Rebate. Yeah.
Rebate, and then finish.
You sand it? I think we're going to pre-finish. You can sand the basalt.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried about the heat buildup in the basalt, then burning some of the timber next to it.
Huh.
Ah, okay.
Could do, I suppose.
So I don't know. Their son, the artist, has done a few test samples, and it looks good. But it's sort of, when it's sanded in there and it sits flush, it nearly just looks like pyrography. Like, it looks like it's just burned.
Oh, really?
You don't really read the texture of the rock. So I think we're just going to put a raw finish on the stone, inlay it in flush.
That's cool.
Yeah,
just leave it be.
Yeah. He does some pretty cool stuff with melting basalt dust, effectively like turning it into glass. So we might experiment with that. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're always going to get your timber, regardless, is going to move ever so slightly, so you're never going to have that completely flush.
Exactly. Yeah. Even if it was epoxied in, it could expand differently and crack, but yeah, that's a good one. And working on another little coffee table, just an existing design of mine that a client's bought for his house in Tasmania. And then just quoting on a whole load of other small jobs. Like, it's definitely, because the way things have gone, and especially in Victoria, it feels as though a lot of the commercial work is going to just drop like a stone.
Dry up.
Right.
And I remember saying this in our COVID special, our first episode, where we sort of tried to bang heads together and work out what we're going to do. And I had said about kind of pivoting my business to doing smaller pieces that were more easily cost managed.
Yeah.
And I was looking at designing a whole separate range, and then I thought of my star map tables and trying to find a way to make them more controlled costs, how to flat pack them. And I spoke about it on the show the other week about just going with hairpin legs.
Yeah.
So that I've been working on that website in the background, and that should be launching tonight, hopefully.
So you've got a whole different website for it and everything.
Yeah, I figured
cool.
that it was just getting... It's still going to be a sub-brand of my business, so it's going to be Star Mapped by Sawdust Bureau.
Right.
But
cool.
I figured that it just needed its own... It needed to be simple, and it needed its own landing page just to... Something that you arrive at,
good,
whereas it felt as though... I still feel as though I have way too much product on my website.
Right.
And I thought that having this as a standalone thing would be an interesting test just to see how it works. And
easy to track as well. You can really track what's happening. So.
Exactly. So I'll throw a little bit of Facebook ad spend behind it. I haven't done that in, years since I've paid for a Facebook ad. But just something that, it's brought the cost down by about, over $500 by switching the leg design, by just offering 2 sizes of top. It's just allowed me to fix the costs a bit better. So it's not a cheap piece of furniture, but it's more affordable and it's fully customizable. So I'm kind of trying to get it into the range where people are buying it as wedding gifts, anniversary gifts, things like that. So
birthdays, cool.
Yeah, so we'll wait and see how that goes.
It's about locking it down, as you say, the costs and the process, and you just nail it so that Yeah.
So even by having the two different sizes for the underside, like I now have a CNC file for my shaper that locates the holes for the threaded inserts for the legs. It's locked my engraving place, so it's a pretty, it's a controlled exercise to do it. But we'll see how it sells.
Yeah, cool. I've just finished a side table out of paper bark.
It looks really nice.
Yeah, cheers. So I've never used paper bark in that capacity before. What a beautiful wood to work with. Just the grain is just amazing. You know, having worked with Tassie oak a lot with a very long splintery grain, this is the complete opposite. It's almost soapy in its texture. It's amazing. And tried a T bridle join on an angle for the first time, which was pretty exciting. Never done it before. Again, made me wish I had a table saw. Would have made the job so much easier. And anyway, second time now using hard wax oil, and I don't know if I'm sold on it.
Okay. Oh, you got right. Okay.
I think it's good. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's the wonder child that everyone made it out to be. I feel much more confident with Danish oil.
Huh.
I just find it gets so tacky.
You think it's the actual finishing? Okay.
It gets tacky, and I wanted to ask you guys in terms of when you rag stuff on, when you use a cloth, is there a specific, like maybe I'm getting the cloth wrong, you know, the type of cloth that I'm using?
I use a lint-free. It's just like a white kind of industrial wipe, I think it's called. I can't remember. I can send you the link, but they're not terribly expensive, and they just don't leave any lint behind. One thing I worry, is it the humidity where you are that is causing you issues? Because I know sometimes finishing it on obviously in Melbourne we don't have much humidity, but sometimes down here on a hot day I'll really struggle to get the finish on quick enough.
Yeah.
And whether the humidity is messing with the tack and the cure time of it, that might be something to do with it.
Could be, because I'll admit, like my having now stuffed it up and then watched some videos, I've realized that my method isn't quite right. But if I'm applying to those 4 legs on that side table, by the 4th leg, that cloth that I'm using is gummy.
Oh.
It's really gross.
It must be a temperature thing.
Never had an issue with oils, which are obviously thinner. They are thinner. But it becomes uncomfortable to work with. And especially on the top, if I don't roll, I just get streaks. I cannot get a streak-free finish.
That's what I don't know yet either. I've only really used it on the chairs, and I really loved it for all the small fiddly parts. It was great. I have yet to try it on a big surface, and I'm going to have to do it soon. And I'm a bit nervous that I'm just going to end up with streaky streaks.
You'll be right.
But we'll see. We'll see how we go. I know with Danish oil it flattens out because it's so thin. And I know what you're saying, Robin, is that the Osmo or the other kind of hard wax oils, there's much more solids in it and it's much thicker. And I can see that it probably isn't going to just flatten out as much as something as thin as Danish oil would.
Is that
beautiful
Levos,
on legs
that you're using, Robin?
No, so it's Whittle waxes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's obviously this is nothing against them. You know, I'm sure their product is fine, but I just haven't had that instant success. You know, you go online, you know, the YouTube community, and it is the second coming when you're talking about finishes, and I don't know. I haven't had that epiphany moment.
It's a good segue, I think, actually, because I wonder what if we just have a higher expectation for what the finish is meant to be. So just before we started recording, I mentioned this video that has come out with Ben Ueda, who's made this table, and he admits that it's a bit of a clickbaity title. It's something along the lines of $500 materials and sold the table for $6,000, which is fine. He seems to be just the pump for
Under fire.
bad comments at the moment for like, how dare you sell this table for $6,000 and it only cost you $500. And he addressed a lot of this on their podcast. Well, he addressed certain elements of the negative feedback. And I mean, my take on this is good on him for making $6,000. If someone sees the value in the table for $6,000, fine. I don't care. I'd sell the table for $6,000 if I could. That's like the ultimate kind of business. That's what you want to do.
It's called entrepreneurship. Yeah.
My problem with this particular one, and I don't want to call him out too much, but I think the quality of this table was pretty subpar. And here's me bragging on at the start of this podcast about this guy hammering me for the kitchen. I wanted to, because when you said about this, having a streaky finish, Robin, and I know that he brushed on only 2 coats of water-based polyurethane on that. And my initial reaction was just like, that is going to be streaky. I can't, in my experience with water-based poly, brushing it, it's going to be streaky. 2 coats, it's going to be streaky and not very smooth.
Yeah.
Unless he's using something else that we don't know about. And so that was my take on it. It was like, cool that you made the $6,000 and the client, he said, is happy. But I don't know that I could pass that off to any of my clients I've made tables for, the way he made it. There was some gaps in the actual tabletop itself, and he just put like filler in it. And
Now, I haven't watched the video. What's the...
So it's just a big hunk of plywood.
Yeah.
But he made the plywood top out of 4 pieces of plywood because the tabletop was so big. And where those joins come together, he admittedly showed that there were like gaps on the tabletop, and he put filler, like kind of wood putty in those gaps between the pieces of plywood. And I was just kind of like, the reason this even kind of came to my attention was because we were dealing with this other client at the same time who's complaining about like a quarter of a millimeter. And then I'm like looking at him filling like a 2 millimeter gap with putty that tapers off from like 2 millimeter to nothing over, say, a meter. And like, fine, it's fine if the client likes it. But,
yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. That's got to be
like,
what it comes down to.
Come on, like the quality, the overall quality has got to be at that mark, I would have thought. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
You go first, Bryan.
Okay, so my take on pricing is whatever you can sell it for and get somebody to pay for it, good on you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, for me, like if I take an example from my business, like my pinch bench, the material cost in a pinch bench is about $140.
Right.
I sell that piece for about $3,000.
Sure.
I put a week slightly over a week's worth of labor into it.
Yeah.
So by the time you put my overheads, consumables, the cost of running my business, like everything into it, and the fact that I've spent so much, like I've spent, I don't know, there's maybe 3 or 4 iterations that's gone through being fine-tuned to being a better product than the first one. I don't have a single problem charging that for it. If I had my way, and I'd probably charge a bit more because I feel as though it's worth more. But I want it to sell.
That seems cheap to me.
Yeah.
My impression was that you were selling that for a bit more than that.
No, there is the black version goes for a lot more because of the ebonizing process.
No, right. Is that what it was?
But no, the normal one, I think it comes in at 3,400. I think is the plain thick ash and aluminium version.
Right.
But you know, you market yourself and you hit a certain. I haven't watched this YouTube video, but I listened to the podcast where they were discussing the critique of it. He's found a client base that are prepared to pay for it.
Yeah.
They have the money and they like it. To me,
I don't think that's not even a debatable issue to me.
Not at all. No. So far as the design of it goes, I actually quite like it. Like I like the concertina sort of style of the steel work in the legs. It reminds me a bit. We've got a music venue in Melbourne called the Sydney Myer Music Bowl. It's kind of concertina, tensile structure. It sort of reminds me a little bit of that.
I'm not against you there either. I think that the overall of that table was pretty cool.
Yep, I totally agree with you that the top for that kind of money, I think there's other ways you could have brought the plywood together without compromising it so much as to have a couple of mil gaps. But that's just me. That's,
yeah.
I mean, like talking...
We actually did some kind of brainstorming. Like, I paused the video and I was like, holy crap, look at that gap. What would you do? And we had this little brainstorming session, and we came up with like 4 or 5 different options that could have either made it a feature or blended it away.
Yeah.
Other than using a wood putty. And he's self-admittedly, reasonably new-ish to the making, especially for that kind of thing. I think he's much more proficient in larger scale, like housing things.
Yep.
And he does lots of crafty, smaller things, but I think he hasn't done that many, like, kind of full-scale furniture, standalone furniture pieces.
I think the tool set as well, like, so he's working with mainly hand power tools. He doesn't have a jointer. He doesn't. Yeah. I don't think he has a thickness or anything like that.
No, I think it's just Ryobi tools.
Working within his limits, but there's definitely ways where you could have made that tabletop probably out of solid timber for not much more, and ended up with a better piece at the end. I think what I would have done if I had made that top and there was a gap like that, I would have. I think it would have been nice to route out all the joins, the full strip. Yeah.
And then do something creative with that.
Yep.
Either
put a brass strip in it.
Brass. Even like 6 mil birch ply on its edge, and make some kind of cool cross design out of it, or just inlay an extra piece of birch that you wouldn't really pick up except on like a certain angle, and you'd see this extra kind of hidden detail where there was like a birch inlay in birch, and it would have been like, oh, that's really a subtle, cool little thing.
Yeah. And all you really need is a router.
Yeah, he could have just used a router with a straight edge, which he had. And this is all 20/20 hindsight, which is the worst kind of critique in the world. But I just thought, I don't want to like beat on him, but I thought it was an interesting, for us in the workshop, it was an interesting brainstorming session where we're like, what would we do if this was we had glued this up and we turned it over and then we're like, oh God, we got these gaps. What would we do with it other than what he did? Like, what else could we do? And it was just a fun kind of exercise as well.
It really raises an interesting question, and I guess this would come full circle back to talking about your client, Joey, because maybe in a way, when we are pitching to clients, subtly our level of expertise has got to match their expectation. Now, I think generally our expertise is going to outweigh their expectation because generally people we're selling to aren't woodworkers. But in this case, trying to show the world, Ben's trying to show the world this table. If he's showing it to woodworkers, of course. I mean, of course we're going to do that. Like, I look at a lot of my projects, and I think if you guys were to look at them, you'd tear it apart.
I think the same about that for you guys, though.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because we're going to be the harshest critiques.
Yeah.
So then, how do you? There's a whole movement behind rustic character palette furniture. So, in some ways, of course, through your lens, it's going to look, or through our lens, it's going to look like that. But to someone who's never built a table like that, it's going to be the coolest thing he's ever seen.
I think as well, it does have an instant wow factor about it. Like the form of the legs are what sell the piece.
Yeah,
not the top at all.
I got you there. Yeah.
The legs could be. I mean, if in 5 years' time that plywood top is as damaged as I think it'll get, and all the filler and everything's dropped out and cracked, just chuck away the top and put a new top on it, and I don't know.
That's an interesting idea, actually.
I do actually really like the legs.
Yeah.
I don't know how practical they are, whether you could sit that many people around the table. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to go and watch the video. But the actual form of it, like I could imagine that in a very, very high-end office, this sort of CEO's desk. That would be an amazing piece. As a dining table, I'm not sure how many people you can get around it, whether it be a better way to do that.
I think it would lend itself quite nicely to a concrete top.
Oh yeah. It actually, there's a company in the States called Hard Goods. I don't know if you're familiar with their stuff. They're well worth a follow on Insta. They are the concrete gurus. They run some amazing workshops in rammed earth and concrete in the US, and they did some early stuff with steel frame and concrete tops, which are epic, absolutely epic. So yeah, if anybody is interested in concrete and steel furniture, they are the people to go and look at.
Well, before I look at anything, I'm going to be looking at Ben's video tonight because this sounds really interesting.
Yeah, I might have to go.
Like I say, I don't want to pound on him too much or anything, but I just thought.
I don't think we are. I think we're being.
It was just an interesting
critique. Yeah,
an interesting topic where so much of almost, I think, all of the conversation is about how he can price that out. Yeah. And I just think from, I guess, like you say, Robin, from a maker's point of view, that wasn't really what stood out to me.
Yeah. Like how much is it? It's a 10-seater table or a 12-seater table?
Actually, I can't remember because it was all in feet and stuff. But I feel like it was only just over. I feel like it was only about 400 mil or so longer than a sheet, so maybe only 2.8 long.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, how much are you going to pay for a dining table, like in a big box furniture store that's still not a beautifully made piece of furniture? Like, you're going to be paying in and around like $4,000 to $6,000, and for him, you've got something that's completely unique. Like, I don't know. Charge whatever people will pay for it.
That's it.
Yeah. But I don't think there's a huge amount that needed to be done to turn that from a $6,000 table into like a $12,000 table.
Mm-hmm.
Personally.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, just on a side note, we've talked a couple times off camera about Jaunt Motors, that Instagram channel. A video came out recently. I'm not sure if it was today or recently. I'm guessing it's Dave, the owner, drove it actually got in and drove one of them. What a weird thing to watch a Land Rover get in and start driving and it's complete silence. The most bizarre thing. If you're on Instagram, have a look up Jaunt Motors, and he goes through all like the electronics and stuff. Man, what a cool thing.
We should reach out to them. I reckon they'd be pretty interesting to talk to.
Yeah, like now having watched the video and how they come, I mean, all the electronics are handmade. It's all handmade.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Really interesting. Sorry, I know that was a bit out of left field, but just talking about Instagram just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, good. Are we at the end?
I think we are.
This horse?
It is 8:30 here, which is getting close to bedtime. So let's call it a day.
Sweet.
All right. So to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please go ahead and give it a rating on iTunes. That really does help us out. The Shop Stool Podcast is available on iTunes and most other podcast apps. My name is Robin Lewis. Joey and Brian, thanks again for hanging out. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next show.
See ya.
Cheers, fellas. See ya.